Clickforms information. Basic training webinar continued at, I think it was 10 minutes.
My name is Patty Guthrie, and I'm in tech support here in Clickforms, and I also do some of the training webinars. This is an introduction to the basic features of Clickforms. I'm going to go ahead and go over the most common features of Clickforms, as well as some of the basic services.
I already seen all that shit. I think I was at 8 minutes.
I'm going to go ahead and put mine in because I know what it is. If you don't know what your appraisal world, or we'll be happy to remote in and help you find it. I don't think I've ever seen any set to borrower's name. I'm much more likely to see street address or file number, but we had requests, so they're in there. Obviously, some people do. Now, for the reports, the default is set to automatically save the report properties to the reports database. If you've never used the reports database, you might not even know you have one. And I'll go ahead and show you how to access that and how you might use that to your benefit. If you're one of those who are using the reports database, or you start looking into it and say, hey, I'd like to use this reports database, but I actually want to confirm it when it comes up before I just say go ahead and randomly save, you can check this box too. Then when you save a report that hasn't been saved before, it will actually come up and say, here's the information, is this correct? Is this the right type of report? Do you want to add anything new? And it'll save it to the reports list or the reports database. Same thing. The reports list or database has the list of all the reports that you've saved, but it has more than just the number or the file name. It also lists things like the neighborhood, the borrower, the client name. It could have things like, obviously it's going to have the address, city, state, zip, and all sorts of different things that you might find useful about it. The report type. So that way you can actually find reports much faster. Same thing with your comparables. If you don't know, you actually have been creating a comparables database too all along. I just spoke to somebody yesterday who I was assisting, and they didn't realize that they had a comparables database. And I said, I'll bet you do. So I pointed them to lists, comparables list. We use those two interchangeably, database and list. And they looked at it and they said, wow, I didn't know all these comps were in here. It saves the comp, and if there are any photos with it, it saves it. And that's done here. Now again, same like with the reports database. If you say, gee, I like that it's been saving it automatically, but I want it to ask me so I can say, yes, save them now, or don't save them yet. You can then check these as well. And sometimes people will do that if they know they work on a lot of different variations of a report, and they might not want to save it till the end. Default, though, is for it to just automatically save, not ask. Last thing to see here is that in the comparables, there are two options. Create duplicate comp entries or update existing comps entries. It is set by default to create duplicates. This is because we don't feel that we should tell you, okay, you must update the one that's already in there, because perhaps you don't want to, and then you might be overwriting it. If, however, you look at your comps database, say, I really do want it to always update, feel free to change it to that, and that's actually pretty common. I would say that it'd be good to have that as a default, except for the fact that, as I said, I rarely see, we just don't want to assume that someone's going to necessarily want to do that, so we just always have it set to create duplicate. But there's been plenty of times I remoted and assisted people changing it. Display, for such a minor thing, we get a lot of calls on, and it's a quick time saver, so I want to show you on that. If after you open a report, you always find yourself adjusting the font size up here or maximizing it or doing something like that, keep a note, you can actually set that right here. Now, I was working with someone the other day, and every time they opened a report, they went click, 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 up to 130 or something every time. And I said, you can start at that. And he said, really? And I went in here and I set it to this. So decide what you like for your percentage. You can actually set it to this, and it saves you, at least a couple of clicks, makes it a little faster, or just set it to maximize. I have mine set right now to just sort of like a standard percentage. Again, feel free to go through these in your own time, because there's a lot of interesting stuff in there. You can actually change the colors of the forms. You can change the font either of the active document or for all settings in addition to the active document. So these are always good to check on. Formatting is much the same way. These formatting adjustments you make here are going to be set for the current report. But you can also say, I want it to apply to all new forms when they're added, and I want it to apply to all reports as they are opened. Now, notes here may overwrite manually set cell forwarding in case you already have templates that have specific things set. So it does warn you. But so you could end up conflicting, but I will show you how to set the manual cell formatting as well. But if there is something in here where you say, gee, I always want to round my grid cells to 100, or you can go ahead and change all those on the current form, or you can say, I always want this for all of them. Again, good to poke around and to learn. Last thing I'll touch on in this area specifically, again, go ahead and poke through these, is the sketcher preference. We do get a lot of calls on people who've installed and are running sketchers, but when they double-click the sketch page, it doesn't come up with the right sketcher, or it gives an error. That's because there's this default setting here too. So under Edit, Preferences, Sketcher Preference, it's good to make sure you've selected the correct sketcher that you have. Now you can always access your sketcher by going Tools and clicking on the correct sketcher, but this can make it faster if you already have a sketch page in your report. That way you can just double-click that page. Just make sure you set that. Again, feel free to go through all of these to learn more about the various preferences you can set, but I've had some people who are just absolutely amazed when they start poking through here and realize how much they actually can change on their own. So how do you build a report? Again, I'm not certain of your level of comfort. You may have already been building reports, or you might just be starting out, but we'll go over everything from the beginning. So if I was going to build a report, there's several different ways you can do this: build or open or create a new report. The most basic, and I'm not saying it's the easiest, but the most basic is just do File, New, Empty Form Container. There you go. Doesn't look like much. It's technically a report. There's just nothing in it. A lot of times people will do this if they're starting from scratch for some unusual report that they've been asked to do, something that's outside the realm of the ordinary. That's great that you've got this now, but how do you put forms in it? The next thing you would do is open up the Forms library, if you didn't have that set in preferences to do so already. There's several different ways to open up the Forms library in Clickforms. As a matter of fact, you may realize there's a lot of different ways to do the same things in Clickforms, mostly because this program has been around for a very long time. So, as time has gone on, we changed from shortcut keys to icons, and we don't want to take something away. We don't want someone to call up and say, hey, I'm used to pressing this key to get this on the screen. Why did it go away? We still have a lot of those legacy things in here that people use. My favorite way of bringing up the Forms library, for some reason for me, is just to click on that icon up here. Don't know why, just the way I prefer to do it. Maybe I like icons. You could also, however, access the form library from the Untitled Container by clicking on this little pagey thing right there. When you mouse over to the Forms library. You also can go up to Forms and go to Show in Forms library. And if you were looking closely, you probably saw that it said Control L. So I could also hold down, which you can't see me doing, of course, hold down Control and click the L key, and here's the Forms library. Whatever way you choose to do it is up to you, but that's the various ways you can access the Forms library. Forms library has all the forms that you might possibly need, we hope, for creating a report. If you do hear of a new form that we don't have in here, feel free to contact us. Probably it's already in the works. We usually are notified by everybody when there's a form change or a new form comes out. But sometimes, maybe we didn't hear, or maybe it's something obscure enough that nobody let us know. So feel free to let us know. There we are. Say I want to create a form. I want to create a file, and I want to bring in the form. I'm going to say I want to bring in the 1004. Now I'm going to bet you can just click on Fannie Mae forms. But let's say this is something that isn't as common. So we're just going to put. I was told to do a 1004. There it is. Two different ways you can bring that in your report. You can just double click it. Or you actually can click on it, hold down with your left mouse key, and drag it over this yellow area. For some reason, I seem to like to do click and drag. I don't know why. It's just, I find myself doing that a lot. I mean, it's fine. It's just double click, click and drag. Perhaps I'm just a little more visual or something, and I like to actually see it moving over. But that's the way you can add forms. Just don't forget you can search. So, for example, out here in California, there's been a bunch of people doing disaster-type forms. We get requests, people out looking for two different types, the catastrophic disaster and the regular disaster form. So I can go right, I know where they're located, but I can tell them fastest thing is type disaster, click find, First one that comes up that's under C is the catastrophic disaster inspection. That's the one you're looking for. There's the disaster inspection. And then, of course, you could add whatever you need to add to that particular report. So it's very, very easy to go through and find forms. Typing less is better. Someone had some form they were looking for. Now, we never did find it. I'm suspecting it's actually a lender form or something, but it was like a condo something questionnaire, and they typed in literally condo, I can't remember what it was, questionnaire. Now that relies on two things. One, that it be called literally exactly condo questionnaire, and two, that we spelled it right. So I went and I did a search myself, and I just searched for condo. Now it might take me longer because there's going to be a lot of things called condo, but at least I can go through and say, none of these look like what they were talking about. These are all different directories, and I never did find anything that sounded like what they were looking for. So again, I'm guessing it was a specific form from a lender or something. That happens. But I was able to at least go through and find what it might be. So if you ever go search for a form, if you know the actual form name, that's helpful. Like, for example, if I know that this is a ProTech, I can say, okay, well, here's my ProTech forms. Or if you don't know, at least have some idea what it is. And of course, you can always call us or email us. There's plenty of time.
Okay, I'm going to stop it right there at 1847. We'll continue later.